I am Malcolm Childs.
And I am James Giffins, and we are Just Making Conversation.
The show where we discuss the ins and outs of the model making hobby that we both love so much.
From the greasy sprues to the gloss coats and everything in between, we are going to just make conversation.
Remember, there are other podcasts you can listen to.
Plastic Model Mojo,
The Scale Model Podcast,
Plastic Posse,
On the Bench,
Model Geeks,
Sprue Cutters Union. Or you can head to modelpodcasts.com. Consider leaving a review or 5 stars, as it promotes this podcast to more people to enjoy. Also, consider tossing a coin to us on buymeacoffee.com. It just helps us make content for you.
In this episode, we'll be just making conversation about photography. Do you like to snap away at your builds? Or do you like those moody shots? Maybe you always feel your model is better from meters away.
Do you find photography to be a negative? A quick snap and you're done? Maybe you spend time considering your angles, the composition and lighting of your model to give it the best presentation.
Are you someone that makes strange poses in the garden to bring your build to life, while your neighbours look in horror as you photograph your figure? So before we lose focus, let's find a dark room and see what develops.
Pictures? Do you like pictures? Huh?
Do I like photography?
Hey, you know what I mean?
I like pictures. Yeah, I do like a good picture. You know, the reason being is because I can't handle words. So I like pictures. Pictures tell 1,000 stories.
Pictures tell 1,000 words, and if you're James Giffins, they tell 2,000 words.
So do you like photography? Is it like a hobby of yours?
No, I can't. I studied photography.
Did you?
I did a course in photography during my fine art degree. And I did a stint in a dark room. A stint sounds like I was in prison.
When you say a stint in a dark room, is that your teacher locking you away?
No, I did like a course, like what do you call it when you break down a course into a semester? Yes, I did a semester of photography and dark rooms and did developing and learnt about my f-stops and my focus lengths and my lenses. And that's great, but not once to do any macro photography, which would have been really, really useful for model stuff. I did all sort of soft focus stuff, trying to do kind of clever tricks with negatives and overexposing, underexposing. It wasn't particularly useful for this hobby. It does mean that I don't mind experimenting with a camera and holding a camera and pointing and clicking thousands of times until I get something right.
So I just need to clarify something with you in what you just said. I have understood that right, that you spent a semester exposing.
It was in a dark room, so...
Oh, I see. Okay. I just wonder if the court case had finished.
Exposing, right. Yes. Yes. Well, they're photographs of my own self, so they would have been exposing myself in a dark room. Yeah. Truth's out now.
Can I get your autograph?
But yeah, I have learned about photography, and the thing that I know and I've taken with me though is that you need lots of light and you need a good sensor as well to get the best picture. And I think it's important, personally, I think it's important for me to take good photographs of my models that I've been making so that I can show other people what I have been working on. I don't know how you feel about it, and I'll probably ask you in a minute.
After this short story.
I find it's important to photograph because that's the only, especially during lockdown, it's the only channel I have of showing everybody what I've been working on, what I'm doing, what mistakes I've made, demonstrating what I've done and how I've done it. I mean, if I could, I'd just bring it to your face and say, here, look at that. You just look at it. But I have to photograph it and send it to you. So I need to know what I'm doing. What about you?
Yeah, I'm very much the same. I personally take a great deal of time on what they call a happy snapper, in that I quite often will like, when I'm doing building, to snap away while I'm building. That's not like, paintbrush in one hand and camera in the other. I like to photograph the stages of a build. Not only have I got a record of how I did something, what effect I got from something, or how the effects build up through a process, but it also gives me the ability to share that information, which I regularly do by making up little albums, and so someone can follow the build.
Right. So are you photographing it for yourself or for others?
A bit of both. There are particular builds where you try different techniques. Because it's quite often when I'm doing a different technique, I quite often will snap away as I go through each stage, so I've got a record of how I did it. Because I find that if I want to repeat that, I can't quite remember how I did it. As you said earlier, the micro photography. So you're taking a picture of something that's really, really small that you can't necessarily see very well with a magnifying glass. By taking a picture of it, you've got a record of what you did. And often I find with photography, by doing that, you spot little mistakes that you've not picked up. Oil washes, for example. You oil wash something, you're like, oh, yeah, that looks good. You put your magnifying glasses on, oh, it still looks good. Great, take a picture of it, and there's a great big blob which you haven't cleaned off in completely the wrong place. Or, as someone pointed out to me quite recently, there's going to be a bingo moment, folks. On my flower cast Corvette, someone pointed out that the ropes that I used were fraying and it looked out of scale. And the reason for that was it was cat hair.
Oh, my God.
I'd managed to glue some cat hair to my boat. If I'd realised that I could use the cat hair as line, it would have worked really, really well, but I didn't at the time. But yeah, that was on a picture and I missed that. Yeah, I quite often use photography like that too.
Yeah. Wow. I think also, though, if you're photographing a figure, say, a little figure, and you're going really, really close and zooming right in, you will see lots and lots of areas you can't see with the naked eye. I always think that perhaps it's like a Monet painting where you have lots of splodges. Okay. Of course, I'm not comparing your work to a Monet, but what I'm saying is...
I like the compliment, thank you.
Sure, well, you can take it. But what I'm saying is it could be lots of splodges that once you reduce that picture down and look at it at like a normal distance, those splodges kind of come together like a television works. Those can come all together and it actually looks fine. So does it matter if it looks really good, really close up?
Not particularly in the fine scheme of things, because very few people visit my little room and get their magnifying glass out and start looking at the models. I used to, on 1/35 figures, whack a wash over the face.
Right.
And that's how I highlighted all the features. I didn't spend hours with the strongest magnifying glass to get the pupil right because I didn't need to. They look sufficient. The problem is if you are using your photography to show off your work, and you want to make your picture realistic. For example, hanging your parachutist out on the washing line and taking a picture of it in the sky, then you're going to obviously pick out those bits and pieces. Maybe highlight those things, like with the face, for example, is take a picture far away and say, oh, look, that looks right, and then look up close. And that's how I managed to achieve it.
Mm-hmm. I find there's lots of dust.
I quite often will like to make the picture as much of the model as it is. The one thing I don't do, which a lot of people do, is they'll take a raw picture and put it through a photo editor software of some description and make it a bit more beautiful. They change the tone of the light and they change elements together. I don't do that. I generally will post up the picture I took.
Do you not want to say this is what I've done in Photoshop rather than this is what I've done with a paintbrush?
If I can take a picture that's good enough to show what I want to show, why do I need to edit it? It is what it is.
It depends what you're going to do with that, though. If you're going to use that model as a backdrop for something, say like a album cover or something, I don't know, then yeah, you can manipulate it, whatever. Or if it was supposed to be in an apocalypse, you might put like a filter on it to make it look like it's dusty.
I think those sort of things are great, don't get me wrong, because you can change the environmental speech, if you like, of that photo by adding different bits and pieces. And let's face it, if I'm taking a picture of my model to stick in a magazine, I want it to be super crisp. I want it to be super glossy and beautiful and screaming at me from the magazine how wonderful I am.
I remember photoshopping out shadows on a build I did years ago, and it was for an article. There was a shadow or something in it, and I just had to crop it out or erased it or whatever. That's okay. I allowed myself that. but I wouldn't touch anything up or add anything on. Or
You're creating an environment to show that piece off better by removing a shadow or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I know at least 3 people who use Photoshop and all that sort of stuff, but I know their model is as good as what that picture is. If I got a camera that does what I want it to do, that's fine. The only problem I have, we'll cover this a little bit better later on, is in the room that I'm in, my hobby room, all the lighting in here are daylight bulbs, which in theory should give me a really good light. It should be the same as if I take my model outside. I've got news for you. It really isn't. And actually, there have been a couple of occasions where I've made models and gone, oh, it looks really good. Take it outside and go, oh my God, what the hell? It's very different because it's all about lighting.
I think we covered this in a previous episode where we were talking about putting basketball hoops in our workshops to replicate the lighting effect of being in a sports hall. I think using a good camera is a tool to take a good photograph. Using Photoshop is also a tool to take a good photograph. And if someone was going to use it to enhance their photograph, to give it like the atmosphere, like you say, I think that's fine. But if you're trying to show off, look what I've done, you've done a great job on Photoshop. That's what you've done. And it's kind of like a Tinder profile or something.
Yeah, the other thing to that, Malcolm, is that if I learnt Photoshop, then I'd probably remove 2 of my chins. What do you use when you're taking pictures of your models?
I use a 2-year-old Hawaii? No, it's not Hawaii, is it? Huawei. A 2-year-old Huawei mobile phone.
Right.
That's all I use. The sensor's not fantastic. It's got all the bits and pieces I need to take pictures of the family and selfies with celebs and pictures of my models. It's got zoom. It's got a wide angle. Everything else is fine. I don't have the money to spend on a separate camera. Yeah, I use that. And it's fine. If you follow some basic rules of photography, like enough light, keep the thing still, then it gives perfectly good results. And that's exactly what I used when I photographed stuff for a magazine. They were happy with the resolution and everything. So obviously they printed it tiny on a little pamphlet. It probably fell out. I imagine most people will be the same.
Yeah.
Most people will rely on their phone camera, take the photographs, which is fine. I mean, I don't know anyone who actually has a big swanky camera. Do you, James?
I do have a swanky camera, as it happens. However, it's still in the box. I haven't actually physically used it yet.
Wow. Well, you're very honest.
It's a recent purchase. I want to do something, but I'm scared to touch it just in case I break it. But it is out of its box, and the battery is charged, and I plan to be trying it in the next couple of days. Majority of the time, my pictures are done on my mobile phone, like yourself. I have an Apple phone. It's a couple of years old. The reason I bought the phone at the time, I wanted a reasonable camera. The camera on the Apple phones are pretty good. But I also wanted it for making movies and all that sort of stuff, so that when I did show reports, I could use my phone to do all the little clips that I did with a stabilized gimbal or whatever they call them.
Oh, right, okay.
A little thing you put your phone in that does all flashy stuff. Yeah, and that's worked really well. It's been a great little tool. But the problem is I've got too many pictures on the camera. Yeah, I could just take too many pictures. Yeah, I mean, the only other tool that I have for my pictures is I have a light box.
Oh, okay.
It's actually a fold-up tent, if you like. Well, I've got 2. I've got one for the smaller subjects, and a bigger one as well.
Can I make a not proposition? Something totally different. Can I make a prediction?
Yes.
Regarding those light boxes.
Yes. You
bought one light box, found it was way too small, and then bought another one and found it was just right.
No.
I've known 2 people separately who have done this exactly that.
If I'm totally honest, the reason I've got 2 is because I didn't think, basically, there isn't a box big enough to put some of my dioramas in, so it's pointless even going for a bigger one. So I went for the smaller one for 2 reasons. Firstly, it was something I could take pictures of the bits that I was building, so, the cockpit and, the smaller items and figures and blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Spend a very little amount of money, really, for what it was, on something in which I could then play with to see whether I liked it. and how it was going to work for me. And then I realised it was too small and bought a bigger one. And I tried making one. Basically, I bought some plastic card, made it all up so it was a nice big box, etc. Decided that it would be really great if it folded up into a little box rather than keeping it as separate pieces. So I attached hinges to it and all sorts. But you know what? Normal size hinges don't work on very small, thin card, apparently. Who knew that?
Well, I don't know. You do now.
They were cupboard hinges. But anyway, they were too big.
You put cupboard hinges?
I did, yeah. Little cupboard.
You didn't.
I did, yeah, I did.
On plastic?
On plasticard, yeah. No, foam board. Not plasticard, foam board. It doesn't make it any better because it's not that much thicker.
Couldn't you just put tape down it, stuck it together, and then it'd be a nice living hinge then?
Yeah, I could have, but I didn't think about that. I thought I'd go with the hinge.
Okay. So do you, when you're halfway through a build and you will take a picture and say, oh, look, this is how far I've got, do you then transport it into the light box or you just snap it on your cutting mat?
Both.
Oh, okay.
It depends. Quite often, if I'm really, really happy with the build and I like how it's come out, I'll take the time and trouble to get the light box out and put it in there and fiddle around. If I'm okay with it,
yeah,
I'll just maybe be lazy and not get it out. That is the biggest problem. Although they're really quick to set up, the ones I've bought are quite a thick plastic with poppers on. Whenever you pack it away, whenever you take it back out, the walls aren't straight, so you have to bend them back out and fiddle around and get it so it's a box shape. And if I could put another 2 or 3 foot on this room, make it a little bit longer, I would put them in a position where they were there all the time.
Yeah.
And then I would use them all the time. They're great. They have limits.
Yeah, having a permanent place to photograph something is awesome. It's really cool. So I have all the lights set up, ready to go. I know a couple of modelers have that. They have their little light box all set up, ready to roll with the camera on a tripod. Doesn't move. Is there anything they use that camera for?
Yeah, the only thing I found bad, because I did do it with the little one, because the little one, you just sits on the desk and it doesn't take up a lot of room, really. But the only place I can put it is near my spray booth. Eventually, what I realised was that I was taking pictures and thinking, well, that white doesn't seem to be coming out very well. Because all the dust in the room was in the light box. Yeah. So it's good to pack it away because it keeps it clean and fresh.
Yeah, well, you know how careful you've got to be with overspray.
Yeah.
With airbrushes.
So, yeah, they're another little luxury, if you like, that I've got. I just realised. I've actually got 3.
Oh, get off.
No, I have. I actually got 3.
You got 3 light boxes?
Well, I have 3 boxes that you can class as light boxes. 2 of them have got an LED strip in them, the small one and the larger one. But then there's another larger one that's a material one, which I bought on eBay for next to nothing. And I should really throw it in a bin because it was obviously used in an environment which was very dirty. Because it is very dirty. It's awful.
Is it like a little pop-up tent sort of thing?
Yeah, it's a little pop-up material tent.
Okay. So you've got the camera, you've got the light box. What else do we need for photography? Lights. Do you light your photography properly? So
lighting is something I struggle with a lot. For not only taking pictures, but also for making videos, etc. I haven't got the correct lighting at all. Something I need to invest in. The lighting that I've got in my light boxes are literally an LED strip in which you can angle.
Are they diffused?
No, they're just plain as you like. The plastic is white, so it reflects the light. And then what you can do is you've got different colours that you can lay in, etc. So you can hide the back fold. Realistically, if I'm honest, even the big one I've got is too small. Mm-hmm. Do take my models out in the garden every now and again. Not very often. Mainly because, like I said, I don't like taking a picture of my model with my shed behind it, for example. Or, do you know, the background doesn't match the scale or anything, so I get a bit finicky about that. So I don't do it very often.
I try to do it as much as I can. For the last photographs I've taken of my models, I will try and do it outside because of the lighting. And yeah, you're right. The fact that you've got brick estate in the background and a shed and a washing line with my knickers on it.
The ways around it, though, in fairness, isn't there? You know, you can get around it.
Yeah, I just put the knickers away. But I could just photograph it from a different angle and put it on a higher plinth and things like that. so that it's like a better background. I could take the model, drive it up to somewhere nice and leafy, and photograph it there, or put a background.
Now, it's funny you should say that. We did a group build a couple of years ago now in the Facebook group about your local airfield. So in the UK, we've got lots and lots of old sites that were airfields. Many of them have turned back to farmland, etc., but not literally a stone throw away from where I live is an old airfield. I did a build of a plane that landed at this particular airfield or was based at the airfield for a very short period of time. And I plan, because I still haven't done it, but I plan to take that model up to the airfield and put it on a little grassy base and try and get the right angle so I can get it with the sun's coming up. I've got it all planned in my head. P-51, I think. Is it P-51? So anyway, a plane. That'll do.
Right, gotcha. I always think the light from outside is always better. And I would encourage people to take it outside, even if your background is a bit naff. The light on your model would be fantastic. Overcast is better. All diffused light is I find is always better. At home as well, when you're taking photographs, and just put a piece of paper over it, take a picture, and then, that's it. It stops the rays of light being straight and makes them more natural looking because they're bouncing all over the place.
So we were saying, weren't we, about positioning, and when we're talking about taking your model outside, one of the ways you can get around hiding those lovely bushes in your garden that are not to scale, or a picture of your leopard tank with your leopard print knickers hanging off the line.
Oh, that would be good. What a group build that would be.
There is a way around it. Basically, you can go to a hobby store and purchase yourself a roll of paper. Lay that paper on the table, for example, and then have something to roll that paper up, say, the back of the chair, and lay the roll in the chair. And then that way you've got a continual service in which you can put your model up against, and you're hiding all the background stuff. And that gets you away from those background things. And you're right. In the garden, in the daylight, most of the time, is probably the best light you're going to get.
I did a sci-fi build once, and I took a photograph of it, and I had my shed in the background, which did kind of ruin the picture, but that's what Photoshop's for.
That's where Photoshop does work.
While we're talking about photography, do you think we can talk about moving photography?
Moving, as in videos?
Lots and lots of photography all at once, isn't it?
Very quickly.
Yes, 24 point something, 94 photographies a second. Something, whatever it is. I don't know.
Where did you get that from?
That's the frame rate.
Okay.
You make videos, you should tell me what your frame rates are.
Slow.
Ah, okay. When you are making your videos, James, do you use the same process or the same techniques that you do when you're taking a still photograph?
No, and that's why sometimes my videos aren't of the quality in which I would like, because where I sat right now, I have a U-shaped bench. I'm in the U, and I've got two spotlights above my bench, which, like I said, are quite bright daylight bulbs. And then when I'm making movies, I'm using a C920, which is on a hinge and bracket. It's just moved over the bench. There are lots of shadows that shouldn't be there.
Yeah.
And it's just poor lighting. I'd really like to have two little light panels, but I'd like them on the scissor hinges.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So they're nailed to the ceiling and I can pull them down or back up or whatever. That's what I'd really like.
Wow. Yeah, that would be super cool.
And it would resolve my problems. It would resolve my shadows because the lights I've got, the spotlights, they do what they say on the tin.
Yeah, they light your room very well, but when you're going down to that tiny level, they're not fit for purpose because they make the shadows strong.
They're not as great, no. If I'm looking at a camera and I'm talking to the camera, they're more than adequate. That unfortunately showed me in my full definition, which is, sorry about that. But yeah, when you're working on the bench now, it's a different thing. And I've tried different cameras. I have got a camcorder, and I did do some of my videos with a camcorder, and I've tried different angles. So it's sort of looking over my shoulder, sort of not. And I've never been 100% happy with it. So it's something in which I need a little investment. And if I'm honest, even to the point where I might need somebody that actually knows what they're doing to come in and go, oh my God, what are you doing? Do this, do that.
There's a guy who does quite close-up videos for brush painting of models. He did some videos for Airfix, and what he did is he had two very large, close lights. There were the huge kind of umbrella on it. So it had a light facing the umbrella, and then the umbrella was not an actual umbrella, but it was that kind of shape. And it was a square umbrella. He had two stands next to his desk, and it was literally a pyramid over his desk. Leaned in too far, he'd be right in the light. And that gave him just incredible light from every single direction. You know, the videos come out lovely, you know, because there's so much light from everywhere. Maybe that's what you need, just like you said.
But his physical working space is about 30 centimetres by 30 centimetres, isn't it? Where he has to almost get in the tent.
Yeah. There's no head height. If you put your head in it, it'll go dark. It would. You wouldn't be able to record like you are now.
No.
At the same time.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be able to have a split screen because all I would see is the back of an umbrella.
Yeah.
You know? So it's not practical for that. I'm sure there are ways of perhaps getting around it, but I think, like you said, two drop downs.
The downside to that is when I'm doing my live videos, I do face the camera. So I'd have to do face the camera, switch to desk, move lights, blah, 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 which could be interesting, to say the least.
Yeah, or you could just move the camera that you have now to the middle of the... Well, anyway, tangents. Going on a bit.
Yeah, we've gone off on a complete tangent. Sorry.
Yes.
But anyway, so let's get back on track.
You've also got to make that space into something you've got to build stuff in. So you've got to have paintbrushes and stuff around you as well. And that's not all kind of great for having a studio, is it? You know, so
no, it isn't. And that's something which I think I really want to, or make sure we get across in this podcast. Primarily, those that you are listening, and myself and Malcolm, we are model makers. We're not photographers. We are model makers. It's so easy to be making your model and go, oh, I'll take a picture of that and take a picture of it as it is. Just remember, take a couple of seconds to figure out how you're going to take that picture, how you can compose your picture in its best possible light. By that, I mean, you've got your bench, you've got your cutting mat, you've got your model on top of your cutting mat, you've got your knife, your glue, your bits of sprue everywhere, and you take a picture of it. Don't do that. Take the time to just push the sprue away, push the knife away, reduce the amount of noise, for want of a better phrase, in that picture, and just have your subject as the picture. There are modelers all over the place that I can think of who have a limited space. They'll take a picture of their model and it'll have their paints, it'll have their dirty water, their cup, their crisp packet, or whatever else. You know what I mean? When you take a picture of your model to say, look, I've made this, doesn't it look good? Because that is what we're doing. Take away the crisp packet, take away the bits and pieces, because it detracts from your model. Everyone wants to look at your model, not detritus on your desk. And that's really, really important, I think, personally.
Yeah, I think that's very important. I like it when people will do that and take the time to make sure that the light is, well, for a start, behind the camera, and then you're not taking a photograph into light. So all you're seeing is a shadow of the thing that somebody spent hours and hours making. I don't think I'd ever say, oh, God, your picture's terrible. But I might say something like, well done. Can we see some photographs from the other side? Because you worked on it so hard. Work on the photography just for a couple more minutes just to make it look great. That's what I say. I think when you're talking about photography, if you're just going to do a couple of quick snaps, it's just really quick, easy things that you can remember. Make sure it's in focus. So when you're taking a photograph with your phone, just click the middle of the screen and it should focus on the thing, and then you can snap it. Yeah. If you're able to crop the highlights, the interesting parts of the model. Don't just have a tiny, tiny little model in your kitchen that you took from the other side of the room. Get nice and close and get a good crop of that. Get rid of all the crap, as James said. Make sure it's lit nicely. You know, a light source should be behind you when you're taking a photograph, but also the angle that you're taking the photograph as well. I always like to try, if I can, and take a scale height photograph. So if somebody had a camera that was the same scale as the thing, and the height that they would be when they took a photograph. Does that make sense?
Yes. So when you're taking a picture of a tank, for example, you're going to take your picture of that Churchill tank that you've gone to the museum to look at head height. So try and imagine head height in scale of the subject in which you're taking a picture of.
Yeah, I like to do that, especially for my final photographs. It's just a thing I like to do. Otherwise, what have you got, a drone to fly around with it? It's an extra level of realism if that's what you're going for.
I think also with that as well to remember. I know certainly on the social media side of things, you quite often will see pictures of models and people that host these sort of things will always say to you, please put a description of what it is we're looking at. What scale is it? What company is it is made by? And some will even ask you what paints do you use, what techniques do you use, etc., etc. But one thing in which always surprises me, there are certain pictures that you're like,
what scale is that?
I don't know what scale that is.
I think that's 1/48. I'm not sure. We're like, I don't know.
No, it's 1/32. Definitely 1/32. And it's a 1/72, and that is that technique. It is literally finding that sweet spot of an angle of the subject in which you're taking. That's the other reason for taking away the stuff that's on your desk, because it screams at you that pot of humbrol is the same size as the wheel. It ain't 1/72, is it?
Unless, of course, you're trying to show how tiny it is. Of course. Then stick some banana for scale coin or something so people know what sort of size it is. The other one, though, James, is the pictures I've seen sometimes of model makers. They have a photograph, and I look at it and I go, "Have they just photographed their car in their garage, or is this a model?" Then you have to start scrolling through to see if it's just somebody who's just bought the new car is showing their car off. And it turns out to be a model. Oh, my God. And that's always when there's good lighting, scale height photography, it's in focus, and it's lit nicely. There's a guy, I can't remember his name, who he's made a garage up, like a little scale garage, and it's got a vending machine in it. And
yes, I know who you mean.
Yeah, and he does his cars, and he puts it in there, and it's like, oh, that's awesome. And the first time I saw him doing that, I thought he had photographed his car in a garage and stuck it on a modelling site. I literally did. And
there is nothing more of a compliment to a model maker for someone to say, what scale is that? I'm not sure. I can't understand.
Yeah, I guess so, yeah.
You've taken a subject matter, you've done a good build, done a good job on it, and you've confused the viewer. It's not about being cocky or anything like that. It's a case of you've made someone stop and think. And that's what you want. When you're taking a picture of your model, you want them to stop, admire the effort you've put in. You want them to see those little bits of detail and stuff that you would struggle to see otherwise. Again, it harks back to what we've said about 3 or 4 times already through this podcast, is how much time did it take you to make your model? Why wouldn't you take just that little extra time to take a picture on your bench? It's a no-brainer to me, really isn't. Sorry.
Good photography is important, but people just point and click, don't they? A lot of cameras are sold on the fact that you don't have to worry about it. You just point, click, and the camera will do all the work.
And I've got news for you. That's not the truth. Don't be fooled. Even the camera that's sat over there is one of those sort of cameras in which I should just take it out of the box and click, and everything's perfect. I know it's not.
Well, the price you pay for it, you should get a photographer with it.
No, unfortunately, she wouldn't come with it. She said that I was too fat. She didn't have a wide enough angled lens.
You should be able to press the trigger and a little guy jumps out, does all the things you need to do, and then photographs it and then posts it to Facebook for you at that price.
If I had a little guy jump out, he'd walk off in a huff.
I can't work with you. I need a professional. I photographed Princess Anne, don't you know?
We have had a little time before we recorded this, and I had planned to buy a book, read a book, but I don't understand why a book about photography can't just have pictures in it. I have done a little bit of research, and I did find out a little thing that I didn't know anything about today.
Did you go and get a pop-up book from the library on photography?
No, I'm not allowed them anymore. In fact, I'm not allowed in the library anymore, but anyway.
That's a whole other podcast.
That's a long story that we can't afford the time to do that. Something in which you should take into account is your digital storage. Now, I sound all posh, but I guarantee you this is not off the top of my head. This is something I learned today. We talked earlier about having the ability to edit your picture. I don't know all the technical terms, but I know Malcolm's going to back me up as soon as I say it. He's got that look in his face right now of horror. So when you take your picture, you're told the camera all the settings you want, and it stores an awful lot of information within that image. If you store it as DEP, it's a RAW image. Now, the difference between the two is a RAW image has all the information that camera took, all that money you spent on that really expensive camera, all in that picture. You take a JPEG, that's it. You can't really manipulate it too much. And this is the fact that I didn't know. Each time you crop or manipulate that photo and resave it as a JPEG, all the information that was previously there is gone. The more you manipulate it, the more that picture will degrade. Now, I didn't know that today. That's all news to me.
Yeah, so you're talking about compression.
Yeah.
There's lots of different ways that JPEG compressed, or different levels of compression that a JPEG can be compressed at. So you can get uncompressed JPEGs that don't lose any detail. But if you are using Facebook, for example, they will compress the images themselves for display on phones and on desktops. Yeah, your images will be degraded. So if someone then right-clicks and saves as that picture off Facebook, it's a degraded image. And so what happens when it compresses is it tries to take information that it doesn't have to repeat. Like a white background, it'll just say, all that area is white. And that'll be all the information it gives you. Instead of it saying, this pixel is white, this pixel is white, this pixel is white. Doing that means it stores less information. So, of course, if you then copy it, it doesn't know what color it was before. It just knows all that area is white, and it'll just remain white. So, yeah, you're right. Saving it as a DEP or whatever format is your raw format is best, but it will be a large file. If you're storing lots of images, invest in some digital storage for your cloud, because that's awesome. And try and keep up with them as well. One of the issues I have is I have terabytes of photographs from years back that I've taken of all sorts of places, museums and God knows where, all my models and things like that. And none of them are organized or sorted or anything. And it's just a big old mess. It's like folder one and that's it.
It's the same with my phone, which, funny enough, I was looking for a particular image that you asked me about the other day that was from a show. And the only file I have is 2017, 2018, 2019. That's pretty much it. There's all sorts of stuff on there.
You store your stuff on Apple, don't you? So doesn't that automatically decide where it goes and what it's a picture of? And can't you search for pictures of blue things and things like that on your...
I'm sure I can, but I have no idea how to do it. I mean, I can click on a button and bring all my pictures up.
No, I think you can do that.
Yeah, I'm sure you can. I don't use it to its full potential. I mean, my phone is linked to my computer, and I walk in the room, and by the time the computer's switched on, it's all Bluetoothed over, and it's all there. So, realistically, all the pictures on my phone I can delete every month because they're already stored somewhere else. But I have recently gone through the computer and deleted an awful lot of pictures because, I mean, I had pictures on there which were from when I first bought the computer, which was 4 or 5 years ago. And they were from the model shows that I've been in those years. So, I mean, it's great reference, but I've got them elsewhere as a video, so I don't need them anymore. Again, you're right. With the digital storage, keep on top of it. Don't let it get out of hand. Especially if you are paying that extra bit for storage in the cloud. Because, you know, if you can delete 100 pictures, it's 100 pictures more you can take.
Yeah. Well, I was going to give some counter advice. I was going to say, don't be afraid of taking pictures. Don't be afraid of taking lots and lots and lots and lots of pictures, because it's free, isn't it, these days with digital cameras? You can take 1,000 photographs. In the old days, you'd have to have 1,000 negatives you'd have to develop. Well, just take loads. And then you can always delete loads, I suppose.
And it costs you nothing, you know, with a digital camera or phone. You take thousands of pictures and you can sit there and go, I've got 10 pictures of that particular model. That's the best picture. All the rest I can delete.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah.
You know, take your camera and using the scale height idea, go around your model at an angle taking pictures. And you'll find that sweet spot without really realising you've done it because you've taken 30 pictures.
Scale height. Do you think that's a thing? Do you think people have talked about that before?
Scale height is a thing, yeah. It's actually scale head height.
Scale head height. It is a thing. Okay. Oh, that's a shame. I was going to call it the Malcolm principle or something, but if that's all it exists, then I can't claim it.
3 things I wrote down from my little research I did, and it was scale head height, in-scale backdrop, and depth of field. That was the main things.
Yeah, depth of field is a tricky one. You get depth of field by zooming in a little bit and stepping back a bit. And then clicking on your image in your camera. That's how I get my depth of field. So it just knocks the background out in blurry background. I can take a photograph on my desk with a keyboard in the background, and all you can see is black rather than keys because it's blurred it out.
Like, for example, you've built a Lancaster and you've got the Bombays open, but it's sitting on the desk. You can't see the Bombay, can you?
No.
If you put a mirror under there, you can see underneath.
Well, I would question. Okay, yeah, we can talk about mirrors. You wanted to talk about mirrors, didn't you?
Nice segue, like that.
Oh, isn't that good? Smooth.
A little tip, basically, when you're taking pictures of your model aircraft, this would generally account to. Say, for example, you've built yourself a nice Lancaster in whatever scale, and you've decided to open the Bombay doors and fully load your Lancaster, etc. But obviously, when it's sat on the desk, you can't see any of it. So don't be afraid of buying yourself a square piece of mirrored plastic in which you can put your plane on, and then you can take a picture at a given angle, which will allow you to see the reflection of what's underneath the plane. And obviously that any bombs or Bombays or wheel bays or anything that's underneath the aircraft that you wouldn't necessarily see, a mirror is a really good idea. Something else that's sometimes a really good idea, depending again on the subject, I would personally say this would work a lot better for figures for motor vehicles. Buy yourself a little round display turning table. Very good for video taking, obviously, because you can press record and it go around and you can see the whole body in one go. They come in different sizes, but generally the easy ones get older, of about 7 inches in diameter, and you get ones that are plastic, or you get ones that have got a mirror on them. So you can actually do the mirror effect as it sits on its spinning. And Malcolm's just showing me, in fact, his spinny MiG.
Yep, you can see it.
That is a MiG, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
This is a podcast. It's not a visual medium, so that was completely pointless.
It's not a visual thing. No.
Photography, being a whole other hobby, is a necessary step to linking your work with social media.
If you spent hours, days, weeks on your model, give the model its due and put some time into showing us what you've done in the best way you can. A well-taken photograph with good light can show your hard work off to its best.
A big thank you to our supporters.
Mike, Jeff, Richard, Lynn, and 2 others.
Why not come and join us on buyusacoffee.com? If you do show your support, leave a message with your name so we can give you a shout out. Next time, we'll be just making conversation about dioramas and vignettes. Goodbye, take care.
Goodbye.